The summons. Ambassador Elena Rodriguez received the emergency summons at 3 a.m. She stumbled to her communication console, still in her sleep clothes, and saw the face of Secretary General Park staring back at her with an expression she'd never seen before, pure terror. "Elena," he said without preamble. "The Corinthian Empire has issued an ultimatum. They're demanding Earth surrender within 48 hours, or they'll sterilize the planet." Elena felt her blood turn to ice. The Corinthians were one of the galaxy's 3 superpowers, a warrior species that had conquered 200 worlds. Their military strength was legendary. Earth had been part of the galactic community for only 20 years, barely long enough to establish trade relations, let alone build a defense fleet. "What are our options?" she asked, her diplomatic training keeping her voice steady despite her fear. "That's why I'm calling you." Park's image flickered as the secure connection wavered. "The Corinthians have agreed to one alternative. Single combat between champions. If our champion wins, they'll withdraw their fleet and leave Earth alone. If we lose..." He didn't need to finish. Elena understood perfectly. "Who's our champion?" Park's expression became even grimmer. "You are. The warrior race." 12 hours later, Elena stood in the briefing room aboard the orbital defense station, trying to understand how her life had gone so wrong so quickly. She was a diplomat, not a soldier. She'd spent 15 years negotiating trade agreements and cultural exchanges. The closest she'd ever come to combat was a particularly heated debate about fishing rights. "This is insane," she said, looking at the holographic display showing the Corinthian fleet. 300 warships surrounded Earth like a noose. "I can't fight their champion. I'll be dead in seconds." General Martinez, Earth's military commander, nodded grimly. "Probably. But you're our only choice. The Corinthians specifically requested you after studying our diplomatic corps. They claim you're the human who best represents Earth's values." "I represent peace and negotiation," Elena protested. "Not war." "Exactly," said Dr. Sarah Kim, Earth's xenopsychology expert. "That's what confuses them. The Corinthians have been watching us for 2 decades. They see us trading, negotiating, compromising. They think we're weak. This combat challenge is meant to be an easy victory for them, proof that warrior races are superior to diplomatic ones." Elena sat down heavily. "So I'm supposed to prove them wrong by, what? Beating their champion in a fight I can't possibly win?" "No," said Secretary General Park, who'd arrived at the station an hour earlier. "You're supposed to do what you do best. Find a diplomatic solution." "They won't negotiate," Elena said flatly. "That's the whole point of the combat challenge. It's meant to bypass diplomacy." "Then change the rules," Park replied. "You've spent your entire career finding creative solutions to impossible problems. Find one now." The arena. 24 hours before the deadline, Elena was transported to the Corinthian flagship. The arena was a massive circular chamber, easily 300 meters across. Thousands of Corinthian warriors filled the viewing galleries, their scales glinting under harsh lights. They were huge, nearly 3 meters tall, with muscular bodies designed for combat and 4 arms that ended in claws. In the center of the arena stood the Corinthian champion. General Thraknor was legendary even by Corinthian standards. He had personally killed over 1,000 enemy warriors in single combat. Scarred metal armor covered his body, and each of his 4 arms held a different weapon. Elena walked into the arena wearing her diplomatic uniform, a simple blue suit with Earth's emblem on the shoulder. She carried no weapons. She hadn't even been offered any. The Corinthian emperor, a massive warrior whose scales were pure black with age, stood to address the crowd. His voice boomed through the arena. "Humans of Earth," he said in perfect English. "Your species claims to value peace and diplomacy above strength. Today, you will learn the truth, that only power matters. Your champion carries no weapons and knows nothing of war. She will die quickly, and then your world will be cleansed of your weak philosophy. The crowd of Corinthian warriors roared their approval, a sound like thunder. Elena stepped forward, her heart pounding but her voice steady. "Your Majesty, I request permission to speak before the combat begins." The Emperor's eyes narrowed. "Very well. Speak your final words, human." Elena looked up at the thousands of watching warriors. "I am Ambassador Elena Rodriguez of Earth. I've spent my career studying alien cultures and finding common ground between species. I've negotiated peace between warring factions, resolved trade disputes that seemed impossible, and helped build bridges between civilizations that thought they had nothing in common." She paused, meeting the Emperor's gaze directly. "But I've never done the one thing that Corinthian culture values most. I've never proven my strength in combat. So today, I'm asking for something unprecedented. I'm asking to change the terms of this challenge." The Emperor's scales shifted to a color Elena's briefing materials said indicated amusement. "You think to escape through negotiation? There will be no negotiation. The challenge has been set." "I'm not trying to escape," Elena said calmly. "I'm trying to make this interesting. Your champion will kill me in seconds if we fight by your rules. Where's the honor in that? Where's the challenge?" This caused murmurs in the crowd. Honor and challenge were sacred concepts to the Corinthians. "What do you propose?" the Emperor asked, his interest clearly piqued. Elena took a deep breath. This was the gamble she'd been planning for the entire journey to the flagship. "I propose that instead of combat to the death, we engage in a competition of skills. Your champion represents the warrior's path, strength, speed, lethality. I represent the diplomat's path, understanding, creativity, adaptation. Let's see which philosophy is truly superior." "How would such a competition work?" Thraknor spoke for the first time, his voice like grinding stone. "We set 3 challenges," Elena explained. "One that tests physical prowess, your strength. One that tests problem-solving, my specialty. And one that tests something neither of us has considered yet. If you win 2 of 3, Earth surrenders. If I win 2 of 3, you withdraw your fleet." The arena fell silent. The Corinthians were clearly debating among themselves. Finally, the Emperor spoke. "Your proposal is intriguing. But it changes nothing. My champion excels at all forms of challenge, not just combat. You will still lose." "Maybe," Elena said. "But at least it will be interesting to watch." The Emperor's scales shifted again, this time to a color that indicated respect. "Very well. The challenge is accepted. We begin tomorrow at dawn. The first challenge." The next morning, Elena woke in the small cell she'd been given aboard the Corinthian flagship. Her entire body ached from tension and lack of sleep. In 12 hours, the modified challenge would begin, and she still had no idea if she'd made things better or worse. Dr. Kim's voice came through her communicator. "Elena, we've been analyzing Corinthian culture all night. I think I understand what you're trying to do, but I'm not sure it will work." "Tell me anyway," Elena said, splashing cold water on her face. "The Corinthians respect strength, yes, but they also respect cleverness in battle. Their greatest heroes aren't just strong, they're strategically brilliant. By reframing this as a multi-challenge competition, you're forcing them to evaluate you on terms that include but exceed pure combat ability. So I might have a chance? A small one. But Elena, you need to understand something about Corinthian psychology. They value honor above everything. If you try to cheat or trick them, they'll view it as ultimate disrespect. Whatever you do in these challenges, it has to be clever but fair." "Understood," Elena said, though her stomach churned with anxiety. The first challenge was announced an hour later, pure physical combat, but non-lethal. Each competitor would try to force the other out of a designated circle. No weapons, no killing, just strength against strength. Elena stood in the circle, facing Thraknor across 20 meters of bare metal floor. The Corinthian champion had removed his armor, revealing muscles that looked like they'd been carved from rock. His 4 arms flexed as he prepared to charge. Elena had exactly one advantage: she'd spent the night studying recordings of Corinthian combat techniques. She'd noticed something interesting. Despite their 4 arms, Corinthians had a blind spot in their defensive patterns. They were so used to overwhelming opponents with superior strength that they rarely had to worry about agility. The starting horn sounded. Thraknor charged like a living tank. Elena didn't try to meet his charge. Instead, she did something no Corinthian warrior would do: she ran away. The crowd roared with what sounded like laughter. But Elena was counting steps, measuring distances. Thraknor was fast, but his massive body had momentum. She led him in a wide circle, making him change direction repeatedly. When she saw her moment, Elena stopped suddenly and dropped to the ground. Thraknor, unable to stop his charging momentum, flew over her. Elena rolled sideways, hooked her leg around one of his 4 ankles, and used his own momentum to send him tumbling toward the circle's edge. The Corinthian champion stopped himself just before crossing the line, his claws digging into the metal floor. He turned to face Elena, and she saw something in his eyes she hadn't expected: respect. "You use our own strength against us," he said. "Clever." "I'm a diplomat," Elena replied, breathing hard. "I look for weaknesses in systems and exploit them peacefully." They circled each other. Thraknor was more cautious now, respecting Elena's agility. But he was also learning, adapting his strategy. When he charged again, he controlled his momentum better. When Elena tried the same trip technique, he was ready for it. For 30 minutes, they fought. Elena used every trick she could think of, exploiting his blind spots, using his momentum against him, staying just out of reach of his longer arms. But gradually, Thraknor's superior strength and endurance began to tell. Elena's muscles screamed. Her breath came in ragged gasps. She couldn't keep this up much longer. Thraknor knew it too. He pressed his advantage, driving her toward the circle's edge. In desperation, Elena tried something insane. Instead of retreating, she charged directly at Thraknor. The move surprised him: no smaller opponent had ever willingly entered his grappling range. Elena ducked under his reaching arms and grabbed his legs, not to trip him but to push. It shouldn't have worked. She wasn't strong enough. But Thraknor had been leaning forward, putting all his weight into his reach. Elena's push, combined with his forward momentum, sent him off balance. He staggered backward, and his foot crossed the line. Silence filled the arena. Then, slowly, Thraknor began to laugh, a sound like rocks grinding together. "Impossible. You used my own aggression against me. In my arrogance, I forgot to defend." The Emperor stood. The human wins the first challenge. The score is 1-0. Elena collapsed to her knees, unable to believe she'd actually won. Around her, the Corinthian crowd roared, not with anger, but with something that sounded almost like appreciation: the second challenge. Elena had 2 hours to rest before the second challenge. She spent most of it lying on a medical table while Dr. Kim monitored her vital signs remotely. "Your heart rate is dangerously elevated," Kim warned. "Elena, you can't keep this up. Even if you win the second challenge, the third will kill you." "Then I'll win the second challenge and hope the third doesn't require physical strength," Elena replied, trying to keep her voice light despite her exhaustion. The second challenge was announced: a strategic puzzle. Both competitors would be given a holographic simulation of a fleet battle. Whoever could achieve victory with fewer losses would win. Elena felt a surge of hope. This was closer to her area of expertise. Diplomats had to think strategically, considering multiple perspectives and finding optimal solutions. The simulation began. Elena and Thraknor stood at separate control stations, each commanding a fleet of 50 ships against an equal enemy force. The holographic display showed every ship, every movement, every tactical possibility. Thraknor attacked immediately, his strategy aggressive and direct. He used standard Corinthian tactics, overwhelming force at key points, accepting heavy losses to achieve objectives. It was brutal, efficient, and effective. He won his simulation in 15 minutes with 20 ships remaining. Now it was Elena's turn. She studied the scenario carefully, seeing not just the ships but the patterns, the assumptions built into the simulation. This wasn't just a battle, it was a cultural test. The scenario was designed with Corinthian strategic thinking in mind. But Elena wasn't Corinthian. Instead of attacking, she positioned her fleet defensively. She studied the enemy's movement patterns, looking for inefficiencies. When the enemy attacked, she didn't meet force with force. She retreated, leading them deeper into disadvantageous positions. The Corinthian crowd began murmuring. This wasn't how battles were supposed to go. Warriors didn't run from fights. But Elena kept retreating, kept observing. Finally, she saw what she was looking for, a pattern in the enemy's resupply routes. Instead of attacking the enemy fleet, she sent small strike forces to cut their supply lines. The enemy fleet, overextended and without supplies, began to falter. Elena waited until they were weakest, then struck with her full force at their most vulnerable point. The enemy collapsed. Elena won her simulation in 45 minutes with 47 ships remaining, more than twice Thraknor's surviving fleet. The Emperor leaned forward. Explain your strategy. In diplomacy, we call it patience, Elena said. Instead of forcing confrontation, I waited for the optimal moment. Instead of accepting losses as necessary, I found a way to achieve the objective with minimal sacrifice. Thraknor nodded slowly. You fought like no warrior I have ever encountered. You fought like a predator that hunts by outlasting its prey. I fought like someone who values every life, Elena corrected gently. Every ship that survived represents beings who can return to their families. The Emperor's scales shifted through several colors Elena's briefing materials hadn't covered. Finally, he spoke. The human wins the second challenge. The score is 2-0. The arena erupted. Corinthians were shouting, debating, arguing. Elena realized what was happening, she'd won. Earth was saved. The challenge was over. But Thraknor raised all four arms, calling for silence. Your Majesty, I request the third challenge still be held. Why? The Emperor asked. The human has already won. Because, Thraknor said, his voice carrying across the arena, I want to understand. This human has defeated me twice using methods I have never encountered. She fights without fighting. She wins without conquest. I must know if there is truth to her philosophy, or if she has merely been fortunate. The Emperor considered this. Very well. But the stakes must change. Since Earth's fate is already secured, the third challenge will be philosophical. A test not of body or strategy, but of values. The third challenge. The final challenge was unlike anything Elena had imagined. The Emperor explained the rules himself. We will present you both with a scenario. You must each propose a solution. The Corinthian people will vote on which solution is superior. Not which is cleverer or stronger, but which represents a philosophy worthy of respect. The scenario appeared as a hologram, a colony world with two species living on it. The species had been at war for generations, each claiming the planet as their ancestral home. Both had legitimate claims. Both had suffered terrible losses. Violence had become a way of life. As a warrior, how would you bring peace? The Emperor asked Thraknor. The champion stepped forward. I would identify the strongest faction, the one with the clearest claim to the territory. I would back them with overwhelming force, crush the opposition, and establish a clear hierarchy. Peace comes from order, and order comes from strength. It was a pure Corinthian answer, decisive, clear, and brutal in its efficiency. And you, human? The Emperor turned to Elena. Elena looked at the hologram, seeing not just the military situation but the generations of pain and trauma. I would do something that might seem weak to Corinthian eyes. I would bring representatives from both sides together, not their generals or politicians, but ordinary people. Parents who've lost children. Farmers who've lost crops. Teachers who've lost schools. Why? Thraknor asked, genuinely curious. Because wars are started by leaders, but they're suffered by everyone else. I'd make them talk to each other, really talk. Not about territory or history or who deserves what, but about what they've lost and what they want for their children. And if they refuse to talk? The Emperor asked. Then I'd wait. I'd keep trying. I'd bring food, medical supplies, educational programs. I'd show both sides that cooperation brings more benefits than conflict. It might take years, even decades, but eventually, the ordinary people would demand peace because they'd see there's a better way. Elena paused. Your way, Thraknor, would bring peace quickly. But it would be the peace of the graveyard for the losing side. Survivors would teach their children to hate, and the cycle would continue. My way is slower, messier, harder. But it's a peace that might actually last because it's built on understanding rather than submission. The arena fell silent. Finally, an old warrior in the front row stood. I vote for the human solution. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Another Corinthian stood. As do I. Within minutes, it became clear that something unprecedented was happening. The Corinthian people, warriors to their core, raised on values of strength and conquest, were voting overwhelmingly for Elena's diplomatic solution. The Emperor's scales shifted through colors Elena had never seen before. Impossible, he whispered. My people choose peace over strength? Thraknor stepped forward, and to Elena's shock, he knelt. Your Majesty, I believe I understand now. The human strength isn't weakness disguised. It's a different kind of strength, one that requires more courage than any battlefield. He turned to Elena. To face an enemy who wants to kill you and choose to understand them instead, that is terrifying. To wait years for peace when you could have victory in days, that requires patience beyond any warrior's discipline. To value every life, even your enemies, that demands a strength of spirit we Corinthians have never understood. The Emperor stood slowly. Ambassador Rodriguez, you have won all 3 challenges. But more than that, you have taught my people something we did not know we needed to learn. He descended from his throne and approached Elena directly. The Corinthian Empire has conquered 200 worlds in 300 years. We believed strength was the only truth. But you have shown us that our conquests have made us weaker, not stronger. We have created enemies where we could have created friends. Elena's legs finally gave out. She sat down heavily on the arena floor. Your Majesty, I don't understand. Neither do we, the Emperor said, and his scales shifted to a color that might have been humor. But that is why we must learn. Ambassador, the Corinthian Empire wishes to propose a new arrangement with Earth. Not a surrender, not a treaty. An apprenticeship. An apprenticeship? We will teach you our military strength and strategic thinking. And you will teach us your diplomacy and patience. Perhaps together, we can become something greater than either species alone. Thraknor stood beside the Emperor. I wish to be the first student. I want to learn how to fight without fighting, how to win without conquest. Elena looked around the arena at thousands of Corinthian warriors, all watching her with a mixture of confusion and hope. She thought about Earth, safe now not through military victory but through demonstrating a different kind of strength. I accept, she said. On behalf of Earth, I accept this apprenticeship. But I have one condition. Name it, the Emperor said. This arrangement must extend to every species you've conquered. They deserve the same opportunity to teach you their values and learn from your strengths. The Emperor was silent for a long moment. Then his scales shifted to deep purple, the Corinthian color of profound respect. Agreed. Let it be known throughout the galaxy, the Corinthian Empire no longer seeks conquest. We seek understanding. The aftermath. 6 months later, Elena sat in her office on Earth, reviewing reports from across the Corinthian Empire. Former conquered worlds were sending delegations to teach the Corinthians about their cultures. Corinthian warriors were training as diplomats, learning patience and negotiation. It was messy. There were setbacks and misunderstandings. Some Corinthians resented the changes. Some conquered species didn't trust the new arrangement. But it was working. Thraknor sent regular updates from his diplomatic training. His latest message made Elena smile. Today I negotiated a trade agreement without threatening anyone. It took 3 weeks. I wanted to die of boredom. But the final agreement benefits both parties more than any conquest could have. You humans are terrifying. Dr. Kim entered the office with a data pad. Elena, the Galactic Council wants to know how you did it. 3 of the galaxy's oldest conflicts have been resolved in the last 6 months using variations of your methods. They're calling it the Rodriguez Doctrine. Elena laughed. It's not a doctrine. It's just being willing to understand people instead of fighting them. Simple concept. Revolutionary results. Kim smiled. You know what the best part is? The Corinthians are teaching other warrior species that strength doesn't have to mean conquest. They're becoming ambassadors for peace precisely because they used to be the galaxy's greatest conquerors. Elena looked out her window at Earth, peaceful and safe. That's humanity's real gift to the galaxy, she said softly. Not that we're peaceful, lots of species are peaceful. It's that we believe everyone can change, even warrior empires that have conquered for centuries. We see potential where others see only what exists now. Very philosophical, Kim teased. The warrior diplomat has become a warrior philosopher. Still just a diplomat, Elena corrected. But maybe that's enough. Across the galaxy, a Corinthian empire that had once sought to conquer everything was learning to understand instead. And at the heart of that transformation was a simple human truth, that the strongest weapon wasn't the one that destroyed enemies, but the one that turned them into friends.